Hi, I'm Peter Capaldi. I play the Doctor, and you're watching EMS Productions.
Yep, it's reached that point where I have to review this episode. You all know what it is, and you all know how bad it is, but I'm still going to make a video for it. This is Sleep No More. So, Sleep No More. Generally considered easily the worst episode of Series 9, and pretty down low with some of the worst of Doctor Who ever. And well, when I watched it, I didn't think it was quite as bad as I'd remembered. It wasn't good, but it wasn't completely terrible, I don't think. There were some redeeming features, as I'm going to cover. And yes, it's easily the worst of Series 9, and it is pretty bad, but I don't think it's completely irredeemable, if you like. Well, of course, the first thing that hits you as soon as you start watching it is that it's a found footage episode with CCTV cameras and POV shots for the whole episode, which is something that's occasionally used in film, I believe. I've never actually seen anything other than this episode filmed in that style, but I am told, and as it's been said, that they do use that sometimes, and I guess it can work if you do it right, but in this episode I just don't think it worked very well. I mean, they gave it the best go, but just at some point you just can't really tell what's going on, and it obviously doesn't help that it's all very dark setting and stuff, which obviously makes it more difficult, and some of the cameras are black and white as well, which doesn't help either. But I think overall that part of the story didn't really work particularly well, so I'll kind of mention it as I go through the episode, but essentially it didn't really work great, and it was kind of a failed experiment with this type of filming. And of course, another one of the first things that comes up in this episode is the rather interesting opening where we get this weird guy, Rasmussen. I can't pronounce his first name or remember it. It started with a G, I think. Whatever, we'll just call him Rasmussen for this video. And he's sort of set up some sort of message for the people who are watching this, because why are we watching this? Yes, obviously I know the actual reason, but what was his reason for us seeing it? Was it just to see what had happened or something? I can't even remember. Because, well, it's not that good. But yeah, he was assembled some sort of set of footage from all the cameras and CCTV cameras around the station to give someone, whoever's going to be watching, an idea of what's happened in his rescue sort of mission and this kind of thing. So there you go. And well, they went bold without not using the Doctor Who titles, of course. Just the weird sort of pixelated static screen where I saw Doctor Who and Clara Oswald and Leverrier spaceship, I think it said. I'm not sure whether it said anything else. I can't remember. And it's only on for about 3 seconds, and I didn't pause it because I just wanted to get through the episode. So yeah, maybe I'll. Yeah, whatever. You might even see it now, and then you can know more than me. But whatever. It's a weird. The episode in general is very weird, I think is the best way to describe it. Very strange, very unusual, and well, this opening scene, if you like, kind of starts that off. And well, after that we get introduced to the 4 or so main characters, the crew members. I wrote their names down so that I'd remember who they all are. So you've got Nagata, whatever her name is, like the sort of leader, the sort of Asian-y woman leader one. And you've got Chopra, the one who doesn't like the sleep pods. Deepando, the silly one who gets killed singing the song. And the grunt, number 474, because they can. So, well, that's their names and what they do in the episode, but in terms of are they an interesting character, I don't really care about any of them, frankly. Oh no, Deepando died, who cares? Oh no, Chopra died, who cares? 474 sacrificed themselves, who really cares? It was, yeah, it didn't work. Mark Gatiss kind of didn't develop the characters very well. And we just didn't really care about them when they died, when you meant to really have. Clearly it's good they're actually killing people in this episode, because often they don't kill people enough in Doctor Who, so that was good. But it would have been nice if we could have cared slightly about them, because we just really didn't. But there you go. So what more is there really to say on the characters. I might mention them as we come through. Now, one of my favourite parts of this episode, one of the actually good parts of the episode, which I'd forgotten about, was the brilliant lines that the Doctor and Clara get, and some of their moments together, which are just... If Mark Gatiss has written them, hats off to him, because they're actually really good. When they arrive and they show the psychic paper and they are assessing stress, and then they're just like, we're here to assess stress, and I just really like that line as well. And then the Doctor going into something mode, I can't remember what it's from, part of the furniture. That was a great line as well. I don't really know where that's from. I can't remember. I've heard that line so many times, but I don't know where it's from. Let me know, because I can't remember. And you get a few other good moments as well, when some not really nice, as well as sort of comedy moments, you get some really nice moments where the Doctor is sort of saying, hold my hand, if Clara thinks, oh, I'm not scared, but the Doctor's scared, which is a great moment there to show that sort of how good friends they are, and that the Doctor does get scared at times of things. Maybe it's just, I don't think he just did that for show. I think he probably was actually a little bit scared. So that was another nice moment, of course. And one other comedy moment was when they're around the Morpheus like pods and stuff, and Clara like she recognises that Morpheus is the god of dreams or something, and she's just like, not just this, which is another great line that I like. I think there's some great moments in there. You just got to sort of isolate the good lines and forget about 98% of the episode. You pick up these good lines and it looked quite good if we just rolled around on those lines for the whole episode. So yeah, there were some really nice moments, just not very many of them. Another one of these very random things which I didn't quite understand was the "May the gods look favourably upon you" that they kept on saying whenever they're messaging people. This is meant to be the 38th century, I believe, and I don't really... do they have some sort of weird religion-y thing by then that they have to always say "May the gods look favourably upon you" all the time? Because it kind of just got a bit tiresome after some point. Why do they have to start every sentence when they're messaging, like talking over the sort of intercom thingy with other people? Why do they have to start it with "May the gods look favourably upon you"? It's just unnecessary and a bit annoying. So now, one of the other things which I thought was quite an interesting idea is the sleep Morpheus and this sleep pod ideas. I do think that it's not a completely terrible idea. I do like the idea of companies developing these machines so that they can keep people working in all of those hours that they usually spend sleeping. They can just go for like a month without sleeping, I think it is, so they can just work and make profit. And it's quite a sort of sinister and evil way of doing it. You can see why there'd be lots of opposition to it. But I think it's a really great sort of concept that Mark Gatiss came up. You've got to get hats off to him. There were some good moments and some good points to this episode. I think that was one of them, this actual idea of sort of they've taken that sort of big companies and businesses are taking away your sleep now. They've taken away everything else, and now they're taking away your sleep, so you can't even use sleep as an excuse to sort of stop working. You can just carry on and on and on after a 5-minute sleep in a Morpheus pod or something like that. Morpheus sleep pod. So I thought that was actually quite a good idea. I mean, the sleep dust stuff was terrible, but that part of the idea of the sort of concept was quite a good idea, I think. Well, I guess I should mention now the Sandmen, of course, from the song Mr. Sandman. So Clara just names them the Sandmen. It makes sense. It's quite good. Clara gets to do the naming. That's quite a funny moment as well. Another great moment between the Doctor and Clara. They have lots of... Because... This going off at the tangent bit here, but this episode, unlike virtually every other episode of this series, keeps the Doctor and Clara together for the whole episode. They're literally never apart. They never split off into another group and go off somewhere else. Whereas, well, for basically the whole of the Davros 2 parts, they're separated. The whole of the second part, the whole of Before the Flood, they're separated, basically, other than a phone call. Girl Who Died, they're a bit more together, I guess, but they are separated a bit as well. Woman Who Lived, she's obviously not in it. Zygon Invasion and Inversion, she's not really in it either. So this is probably the first episode, and only really Face the Raven to come, where the Doctor and Clara in Series 9 are actually together for virtually the whole episode. Which is nice to see, because we just haven't really... So, as much as this isn't a very good episode, it's probably the best episode in terms of Doctor Clara moments, just because they're together enough for there to be lots of those great lines and moments. So I think it does, as much as you can criticise this episode, it does have some good points, and this is sort of one of them, where a criticism of Series 9 is there's not enough Clara, but this episode sort of, the one you think is least likely to sort of help that, has actually kept them together the whole episode, which I think isn't done enough. We always sort of, yes, they sort of do it to have two separate parts of the story and to get it going off better, but I feel like if we had a few more episodes where the Doctor and Companion stayed together for most of the episode, it would be better just to have a bit more variety rather than it always being all this bit off and do different things throughout the episode. So that'd be a nice thing to add in. And well, coming back to my original point, which is about the Sandmen, they're pretty terrible, I think it's fair to say. This is where this story really does start going to pot. Because actually, when I was watching it, the first sort of 10-15 minutes, I wouldn't say I loved it, but I didn't dislike it. But then once the Sandmen come in, it all just starts to get a bit weird and complicated and stupid, frankly. I mean, the fact, it's just nonsensical that the sleep dust in your eye becomes a monster. I can't, that idea is just kind of like a poor man's blink idea, sort of like, oh, if you blink you die, this kind of thing. It's just sort of, yeah, it doesn't work for me. I don't think it worked for a lot of people. I remember that was one of the biggest criticisms, was that the Sandmen were just such a terrible sort of concept and a villain and a monster. And they were blind as well, so they just sort of aim as these lumps of sleep dust with a big hole for a mouth, just a big like hole like that for a mouth, just aimlessly wandering around because they can't see. It's not exactly the most intimidating and well thought out alien or monster, is it really, I think. So this is pretty disappointing, I think, and it is one of the things that really just lets this down episode massively, because I just don't really think they're any good, frankly. Now I might as well mention Rasmussen as well. He's sort of, as he talked about in the Doctor Who Extra, he's kind of your classic Doctor Who villain, really. This sort of, at first he's kind of in control, masterminding this evil plan, but then towards the end he kind of loses control, if you like, and suddenly becomes all sort of worried and scared and nervous about what's going to happen, and he can't really control things. So he's not a terrible character, I don't think, in this episode. He's one of the more interesting ones for Sleep No More. As the villain, he's got the right costume as well, the right look for it, I think, and what's his name? Oh, Rhys Shearsmith. He does play it really well, actually, I think. Rhys Shearsmith. He's obviously done stuff for Mark Gatiss before, and I think in this episode he plays it quite well. Although it does kind of get a bit confusing with him, because obviously we seem to see he's dead, and then like 5 minutes later he cuts into the footage and says, "Oh yeah, actually, I'm not dead. You realise that? Yeah, you must have realised that by now. I'm not dead." And it did get a bit annoying at times when he suddenly sort of paused the footage and jumped in when he really didn't need him to. And I kind of felt they should have left that a bit more. He was in the actual story, and he was in the footage. Couldn't we just left him in the footage rather than having to shovel him into in between as a narrator as well? I don't think we really needed that so much. Towards later on, we didn't really need that, so that was a bit not so great. But Rasmussen as a character, I thought was quite a good character, actually, as a villain, if you like. And one of the other things that I did quite like in this episode was the twist of there's no cameras. I mean, I remember watching it for the first time. I've only watched this episode 3 times overall, just to say. I watched it when it aired, about 4 days after it aired, gave it one more chance. And so this is the first time in like 6 months that I've watched it. But yeah, when I watched it first time round, I remember me and my family watching it, and we were all kind of like, it doesn't look like there's any cameras. How can Clara be being recorded because there isn't any cameras and stuff? And so it's quite nice that they sort of build it up and then twist it and sort of say, actually, yeah, there's no cameras. It's all these Morpheus machines that are sort of causing, so they're able to record straight from your eyes through the sort of stuff inside that being put inside your head or your brain or something. Was it the sleep dust wasn't recording? I can't remember exactly what it was that was meant to be recording. That's where it gets a bit nonsensical, that there isn't any cameras, but he never gives a particularly valid reason as to why. Because although you can fake most of it with, oh, it was just a story made up for some fun, you can't really make up the fact that there's no cameras and have footage from it. So I can't remember quite what it was with, and they just sort of, and well, actually no, I'll leave it there. So that didn't really work very well. One completely random point that I picked up on was quite a funny moment where you get one of these, you have these, I think it's 2 or 3 times you have a shot of this random pod just floating along the room, across the room, which seems completely random and out of place. Obviously it kind of makes sense towards the end, but in the episode it's just completely random. And it reminded me, I think it's Remembrance of the Daleks, where there's that like wooden sort of box thing that starts floating around everywhere. I can't quite remember. It's been a couple of years since I've watched Remembrance of the Daleks, so I may be getting that wrong. Let me know if you can remember. But I'm sure that reminded me of that, and I'm sure Mark Gatiss, being the big Doctor Who fan he was, he probably took inspiration from something in Doctor Who. If it was that or not, I'm not sure, for that sort of scene, because that's just a very random and kind of didn't really need to throw it in scene, I think. So there you go. And so after we've lost most of the main characters, we've lost Deepando because he had to start singing the Sandman song. He gets through the door, and then the Sandmen kill him, because that's how we roll. And so he's gone. Not that we really cared about him at all, Deepando. He's just kind of a standard character. I don't think it helped generally with the characters of this episode too, because they were all wearing virtually the same clothes and helmets. You can barely see him very well with any of this stuff, with all the sort of dark lighting, helmets, all the same sort of kits and the shots they used. It's kind of quite difficult to differentiate the characters and make them look all really different and interesting, just simply because you can't see very much of them and there's not enough time to give them more decent lines and stuff, I think. So that didn't help. But we lose Deepando, then we lose 474, who sort of saves Chopra. That's it, Chopra, the guy who doesn't like the sleep machines. Because the Grunt's just like, oh, I've got to help, but I've got to kill, but I've got to help. But they because we don't really know what the gender is, do we? They kind of are just idiots, basically. They'll run around. So then they go and save Chopra, sacrifice themselves, Coolio, and then Chopra gets killed as well. And so we're just left with the Doctor, Clara, and Nagata. Or Nagata, I don't know. And Rasmussen, of course. And so we get to those last few minutes where you kind of, they get to the sort of, is it the rescue ship or something they get onto? I can't remember. And we discover this pod that contains the first ever Patient Zero or something, the first ever sleep dust Sandman, whatever you want to call them, these terrible aliens. And well, we kind of just sort of end on all this, none of this makes any sense, because it doesn't make any sense. Clearly because it's all meant to be a story, but it's although I kind of agree with what Stephen Moffat says in the Doctor Who Extra, that the Doctor doesn't always have to win. I did feel like it was a fairly unsatisfying conclusion that the Doctor's trying to just sort of runs off and escapes. He doesn't really save or do anything. He just sort of runs back into, they sort of escape the Sandman, run back into the TARDIS and fly off without him understanding anything or really doing anything, saving anything. He's just kind of there, part of the story, and then escapes. That's kind of it. It doesn't. It's kind of, that's where it all goes downhill there, really, for me. That kind of the Doctor's just sort of doesn't really understand anything, when the Doctor's meant to be the guy who figures everything out, saves the day, and this kind of stuff. But he doesn't. He doesn't do anything. He just loses and goes. That's about it. So that's really disappointing. And well, I kind of like this sort of very last scene where Rasmussen explains to us that this is all a story. I hope you enjoyed it. All the interference contains the sleep dusty stuff. That's the interference transmits a signal that will put the sleep dust in your eye, which will cause you to turn into Sandmen or something like that. I think I understood it, which was all just a bit rubbish, frankly. But it is. I do quite like the whole Rasmussen sort of disintegrating into a Sandman because he's been taken over by the Sandmen apparently. But then are the Sandmen actually kind of real proper aliens or something? I don't quite understand that. It just, yeah. I think you just have to sum this episode up by, it doesn't particularly make sense. I don't think it's particularly meant to make sense because it's all going to be a kind of funny story that's just a bit exciting. He makes it a bit exciting for the fun of it, with a nice ending and this kind of stuff. And so I think overall it's not quite meant to make sense, which is why it kind of put people off quite a lot, because it's you can't really understand it fully because you're not meant to, because you just can't. It doesn't make sense, I think. So I think that's where a lot of the criticism comes from, clearly. And well, it's kind of the same for me. It's just puts the story down a lot and makes it really just unsatisfying, I think. Because as I said, the first 15 minutes are quite good, because I didn't remember it very well. I just remember I always got a really bad reputation. But I kind of said, oh, let's give it another chance. And for those first 10-15 minutes, it was a fairly intriguing storyline, quite interesting, quite enjoyable, but then it kind of just starts to get overly complicated when Rasmussen turns up on the scene and the Sandmen, and it doesn't really work, frankly. And well, I really hope that there isn't a second part, because I know Mark, I think maybe it was just Stephen Moffat, and Peter Capaldi said, oh, we could do with the second part. No, it couldn't, Peter. I love you, Peter, but we don't need a second part for this episode. And Stephen, Mark, don't write a second part. It's not... Well, if you're going to write a second part of the story, do not do it in found footage style. You mustn't do it in found footage style. It was just... That just didn't work at all in this story. It made things so hard to follow and added nothing. So please don't do it like that. Again, if you're going to write a second part. But don't. Look how bad the reviews were for it. Clearly no one wants a second part. I'm sorry, but just don't write one. And well, that's kind of about it. So my sort of summary of the episode is, it's probably not quite as bad as everybody says. It's not a 1 out of 10 worst ever. But it doesn't really make any sense. Although it's not meant to really make any sense. And there definitely should not be a second part of it. We can't plague Series 10 by giving up a whole episode of Series 10 for a part 2 of that. No one wants it, so don't do that. And, well, that's pretty much it. Overall, I gave it a 6 out of 10. Because it does have some promise. There's some nice Dr. Clara moments. The first 10-15 minutes are quite interesting, and I do quite like the idea of the sleep machines and the Morpheus and this idea. And so I don't think it's completely irredeemable in the end. It's up from a 5.5 up to a 6 actually. I thought it was slightly better than when I last watched it. Clearly it's still a very weak, it's a pretty poor story. Easily the worst of Series 9 and pretty low down there in terms of Doctor Who generally. But I don't think it's completely terrible. And so there we go, that's pretty much it to say everything I've said about this episode, I think. And well, I think it's probably a bit shorter than usual, but it's understandable with an episode like this. There's just not quite so much to say. And well, what's next? Face the Raven! Yeah, we're going to have some fun reviewing that one when I'm going to have to be brave to get through that one again. But I'm looking forward to it. Next 3 episodes. Well, now we've got this rubbish one out of the way. Next 3 episodes, Face the Raven, Heaven Sent, Hell Bent. Really looking forward to watching and reviewing all of those ones again, because I think they make such a good classic 3-part finale. So I'm really looking forward to that over the next few weeks, for you to see these videos, see the reviews of 3 top episodes, even if they're slightly tragic and sad and painful to watch. But there we go. I've been Elliot. I'm EMS Productions. Remember to like the video, subscribe if you're new here. I think we're getting close to 1k subs now, which is fantastic. It's taken quite some time, so that's really great. And follow me on Twitter. I haven't mentioned it the last few weeks, but I thought I would again this week. Follow me on Twitter at EMSDW44, where I talk about what videos I'm coming next, and often I'll sort of do a few tweets about what episodes I'm watching at the moment, and any just general thoughts about sort of stories that are going on relating to Doctor Who, filming updates and stuff that will be coming up as well. I'm planning to do some filming videos as well, some videos about Series 10 filming and the likes. If we get any filming pictures or clips or anything you like, I'll try and do some videos about that. Once Series 10 eventually gets started filming, because it's still quite a way away from my point of view, because I'm recording this on the 8th of April. Yeah, I really recorded this that long ago. But there we go, that's pretty much it. I hope you enjoyed my review of Sleep No More. Give it another try, because although it's not great, I think it's still got some good moments, so don't just ignore it completely. If you're going to do a Series 9 rewatch, make sure you watch this as well, because it's not quite that bad. And I'll see you next time, this time next week hopefully, for my review of Face the Raven. Goodbye.